As you've probably figured out by now,
Yeah.
I have these moments of just hyperactivity where I'm just bouncing around.
Sure.
This morning, I was singing to my children.
Yeah.
Just making up a song, singing. I was enjoying it. I was having a good time.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. It was at breakfast, and I said, it was some lyrics about something they were talking about. And I said, hey, that's a pretty good song, no? And my oldest looks at me and he goes, it is if someone else is singing it. I just looked at him.
Quiet, please.
And he had like that same shit-eating grin, smile, smirk that I have. And I was like, you little shit. Like,
In 4.
yep. All right.
3.
You're right.
2.
Company presents a truly terrible podcast. Welcome to Nonsense, Season 2, Episode 43. I'm Jeff Parker.
I'm Stu Little.
This is our take on the week's business, tech, and entertainment headlines. This time we'll look at some news that we've not been able to fit into the program.
It's a lot of news.
It's International Universal Health Coverage Day, aiming to promote affordable and quality health care for all citizens of the world. Having access to affordable medicine and treatment is a basic human right and should be available to everyone. I'm pretty sure both you and I believe that in the U.S. we all need to be in the same health care bucket.
Yes.
It can't be that you're in this insurance because you have this insurance from your employer and you want to keep it. We all have to be in the same bucket because that way those of us who have a little more political wherewithal will fight to make the boat better that we're all in.
Yeah.
And make it better for everyone. Otherwise, we'll just fight to make our own.
Sure.
And our boat will be great and that other boat will suck.
Of course. I mean, not only that, but also we've earned this for all of us, for our species.
Yeah.
Like we should all be afforded the same level of care. You do all this goddamn work to, do things like cure cancer and vaccines and things to improve our quality of life. And everybody should be entitled to that. There should not, I don't want to be stepping over somebody to go get, whatever, some level of health care.
Preach. How's your week going?
Well, not unlike other weeks, it has been a technology bonanza over here at Casa de Little.
That's fun.
I've got new TPUs installed. I bought these little TPUs, these tensor processing units.
And tell me, what does a tensor processing unit do for you?
For me, it lets me basically make my life into memes. So I can do video detection. So right now, I'm mainly using them for video detection.
They go with your security cameras.
Yes, object detection on video. Let me be clear. It does it really well, and I am just blown away at how cheap these fucking things are.
Yeah.
They're like $20. It does 4 trillion operations per second, which is bananas to me. And you can basically hand it video frames, and it will, in 5 to 6 milliseconds, give you back what's in it.
Tell you what it is, yeah.
Breaks my brain.
My cameras tell me if I'm looking at an animal or a vehicle or a human.
Yeah.
And that's about the level of specificity I need.
Yeah.
I would love it if it would tell me it's a raccoon and not a dog.
Sure.
That would be awesome.
That is actually built into what I'm doing. But forget that.
Of course.
You can not only just tell if it's a raccoon or dog, you can be like, which raccoon is it? And it'll tell you that it's Rocky, the one that lives down the street.
I love that.
It's really insane. So I want to use these for doing some other sort of machine learning and AI locally. I'm just super impressed. I bought some new NVRs that I'm auditioning.
An NVR?
Network video recorder. So basically it's a hard drive with an Ethernet plug on it that will record streams of video.
Records your security cams.
Yeah, so that's been fun.
You and I have both gone nuts with security cams in the last few months.
Oh yeah, we shouldn't be allowed to spend this much time together. I think it's really the problem. We should I feel like just the community at large should put a restraining order against us. And along those lines, I bought some new switching gear to support those cameras. I've got some new low power IoT devices.
IoT is Internet of Things. Go ahead.
Internet of Things. Sorry. Yes. I got some new Internet of Things devices, like very low powered, little, relatively simple, relatively dumb devices. In reality, they're not dumb at all.
Right. Little matter over thread devices.
They're just so low power. You make them do only one thing. But then I also went ahead and got myself some new phones and watches because why not? I want a week of just nothing working at all in my life. I just want to make sure everything is fucking broken. And that is exactly the world that I'm in. I'm lucky I can get anything to work at all.
Before you get onto the phone, I want to backtrack one second. You're talking about these IoT devices. They are all running, for the most part, on EspressF chips. They're all running on RISC-V chips. 20 years ago, when I first saw an ARM chip, I was like, Intel has to buy ARM.
Yeah.
It's the only way they're going to stay relevant. And the ARM chip 20 years ago barely did anything. But you could see where it was going.
Sure.
Now I look at the RISC-V chip and I go, wow, the ARM chip is toast.
Now I look at ARM and I go, man, ARM needs to buy Intel.
Yeah, well, ARM could buy Intel just to give it a nice burial.
To give it a nice burial. Oh my God, that's just terrible. They just take it out to sea, all the bunnymen, and they just wrap them up and just just dump it over the side.
I just came of age on computers that ran Intel chips. So
of course, we all did.
Somewhat sentimental about
Everybody
it.
did.
But I shouldn't be. They were expensive, and now they're expensive and not technologically up to date.
I think you need to wrap your brain around it as I have. It served its purpose. It got us to the next step.
I hope Intel figures it out. I hope Intel figures out a way to make themselves highly relevant again.
Intel is going to be like Pontiac. GM's going to buy it. They're going to make a couple more versions of it, and they're going to shut that fucker down at the first chance they get. And you'd be like, oh, I miss Pontiac. And thinking of. Like, do you really miss Pontiac?
Sure.
What, the Firebird? What, the Camaro with some extra shit glued on it? Nah, it's okay. I think it's gone forever. Anyway, the phone thing is a big deal for me because I have been a customer of what is now AT&T Wireless since basically when I met you back to like 1996, give or take.
Sure.
Because I wanted the first GSM phone. Back then we had basically CDMA or what became Verizon, which is a sort of antiquated, more tired...
Competing standards. There were two companies that had CDMA.
Competing standard, but GSM had just come out and GSM wasn't even globalized yet. Like it was becoming globalized and we had a different spectrum for GSM here than internationally.
Yeah.
But you still had a SIM card, you still had these concepts that made sense to me. So I really wanted it when I was looking to buy a phone. I really wanted a GSM phone. I actually went back, I posted on Threads something about this, went back and found bills from 25 years ago. When, by the way, I was spending like $500 a month for fucking phone service.
Oh yeah, sure.
In $1990. Like I could have just bought a car every month and just sent messages around to people. It was insane. But so anyway, so I've been through Pac Bell Wireless. I've been through SBC, Singular, now AT&T, and I just realized
iterations of all the same company.
Of the same thing, yeah. And after 29 years of basically carrier monogamy, it hadn't done anything for me at all. No. Like if anything, AT&T's just gotten fat and lazy. And I'm like, I'm going to go on to the new one somewhere else. And so I flew the coop. And for the most part, it's been a very easy transition. Number porting has been super simple.
Yeah.
Device-to-device transfer on an iPhone is incredible and works very, very well. There's a couple apps I have to port over manually, namely like Signal, which we promote a lot on the show. You have to do a little dance with WhatsApp.
Sure.
But for the most part, everything just works. And I'm super impressed. The only caveat is freaking iMessage. iMessage requires somebody to like throw a manual switch in the background. And it literally takes, they say 24 to 48 hours. And I'm like,
what are they doing in that amount of time? I know what they're doing.
What the fuck are you doing?
No, there are monks who are writing by hand with quills.
There's Trappists.
Each and every message to your new phone.
They're in the middle of brewing beer and they're like, let's take a moment here to go approve this. I've literally given both providers access to my phone. My phone number has actually switched.
It's crazy.
I'm now getting phone calls routed to the new thing, but Apple's like, no, we need to be certain and we need the monk to write it in blood. So anyway, it's been a smooth transition. Hopefully next week, most of the dust will have settled and I'll be back on to whatever the next technology bonanza I'm interested in.
Next project.
That's been my week. How about you?
As listeners know, I'm absolutely madly in love with my family. Next week, my Aunt Dee Dee has colon cancer surgery, not unlike the diverticulitis surgery you had a decade ago.
Yeah.
They seem to have caught her cancer very early, and the 5-year survival odds in 2024 are like 91%. Survival rates for colon cancer have significantly improved over the past few decades, largely due to advancements in screening methods, early detection, and treatment options. If you haven't already, treat yourself to a great Christmas present and get yourself checked.
Yeah.
At least for now, early detection is the ball game.
As a man who's had a colectomy, which by the way, now I refer to myself as semicolon, which I think is hysterical. Nobody ever laughs at.
You are collected.
Yes, exactly. The whole procedure is absolutely incredible that it even works, let alone that I'm out of the hospital in 5 days.
It's a miracle we figured this out.
And just for like the cliff notes for folks, they literally take your intestines out through your stomach.
Yeah.
Cut out the chunk they don't want, sew it back together, push it back in, staple you up, send you home. Like it's bananas.
Well, they don't send you right home, but yes.
Well, they make you stick around for a couple days. They want you to fart in the hospital, basically. But then they send you home. It's incredible.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
We celebrate chip advances and technical advances, medical advances in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Where we were 30 years ago and where we are today, we're in a different universe. Also, I don't know how my aunt got her cancer, but you know I'm going to say this. Bacon and other processed meats like ham, hot dogs, pepperoni, and deli meats are little morsels of cancer.
Delicious, delicious cancer.
Yes, I eat them too. Look at them like cigarettes, only their type of cancer is colorectal. They increase your risk of colorectal and stomach cancer by over 20%. I'm just saying the linkage between processed meats and cancer is so strong, we might all think about cutting back a little.
Yeah, maybe a lot.
In other news, we've confused people with our vintage ads.
Success! Success! We've achievement unlocked, everybody.
I've gotten so many questions about those, and it's literally just nothing more than a tip of the hat to advancement, a little celebration of advancement.
If you know, you know. That's basically all I can say. Otherwise, just do what everybody else does in the podcast world and just press fast forward 15 seconds.
Just ignore it.
Move on to the next thing. But if you know, you know.
Let's get to our headlines.
Let's do it.
Google launched Gemini 2, its new AI model for practically everything. Gemini 2 can generate images and audio, is faster and cheaper to run, and it's meant to make AI agents possible.
This is actually really interesting to me. You know, obviously they're going after what everybody else is, the OpenAIs and Amazons and Microsofts and Anthropics.
Sure.
But they've got some interesting stuff in here that's sort of around this 2.0 that I think is really fascinating that I didn't know about. I mean, they're these what they're calling agentic AIs, which are the AI bots that can go actually do things like that's super compelling.
Do
to me.
complex things for you.
Complex things, yeah.
I need you to pay my water bill, check my checking account to make sure it has enough money in it. if it doesn't transfer money into my checking account from my savings account and then pay the bill. And it's like, wow, that it can
There's
do
nobody
that.
named Bill in your contact book. Would you like me to add one? What? No. Fuck. Pay my bill, God damn it.
Paying Bill Gates.
Paying Bill Gates. No. Fuck. They've got this thing called Project Astra, which can like identify objects and actually help you navigate around the world. Like you saw this in the demo they did a while ago. They're like, where did I leave my glasses? And it just tells you.
This is a much better version of that.
I mean, that is like fascinating and petrifying at the same time, which is what all of this is for me.
Yeah.
They've got Project Mariner, which is a Chrome extension that you can use to web browse for you. Holy shit. They took the Terminator and they put it in the browser. Like, oh my God. I just want to be like, hey, go rage post on 4chan for me and just let it rip. Just let it go to town. So that one blew me away. But then they also have this, I think they call it Jules, which is like their programmer, their developer helper to like fix bad code, which is great. I mean, that has been, because code is typically, except with JavaScript, is typically logical, then it's relatively easy for those things to do. Then they also have a Gemini 2.0 based agent that can look at your screen and help you better play video games. And I'm like, wait a minute.
That's just a bonus thing. That's not even part of that program.
What the fuck is the point? At some point when it's like, oh, well, my AI is better than your AI at playing fucking Minecraft or playing Fortnite, you're like, what are we doing? Like, what are we, like when e-gaming is just a bunch of robots running around like,
well, no, this makes you a better gamer. This tells you things to be a better gamer.
Anyway, I think it's super cool. I'm very intrigued by this.
You play with it on the web browser. It's coming today on your web browser.
Awesome.
Okay, enough of the headlines. Up next, we're going to catch up on a little more of the news that we've missed.
Yeah, that news don't stop, bitch.
Thank you.
Right?
Sure.
But there's so much news coming at me constantly.
Sure.
What could help me? What kind of system could help me consume all this news?
I thought you'd never ask. Why an ARC Skyscraper, of course.
Ooh. With
over 300,000 ARC systems worldwide, you can easily see that they deliver the goods. What are the goods, you ask? Good question. This episode, we're featuring the Skyscraper 486C freestanding 825 or 833 megahertz 8486 monster that includes 2 megabytes onboard RAM.
Wow.
150 megabyte SCSI hard drive, 2 floppy disk drives, a couple of serial ports, and a parallel port to print.
I could store like 3 images on that hard drive from my new iPhone.
ARC Systems is built on 10 years of PC design and manufacturing excellence. When you deal with ARC, you get direct access to factory warranty service, upgrades, and a technical staff as long as you own your ARC system.
I'm going to order my Skyscraper 486 today.
Link in show notes, my old friend, link in show notes.
Abraham Lincoln show notes.
I love record days because I feel like I gain so much information.
Well, first of all, I'm faking it until I make it.
I like learning all of these things about what's happening in the tech world, and I always feel like on record days, I learn a lot from you.
Most of it's just this magic 8-ball on my desk.
Well, whatever it is, I do come away from it going, this is a truly joyful experience because I feel like I know more about these stories when we finish than I did when we started.
I do feel like some of these stories, though, we get, and I start reading into them and reading, I was like, oh, there's so much stuff I just don't know about this.
Oh, yeah, the world is big, it turns out.
Deep rabbit hole, and then the sun's going down, and I'm still trying to figure out, how many flops a 486 made in 1989. And I'm like, why am I doing this? What happened? Why am I still here?
And now it's not even measured in flops; it's in teraflops, or
flops.
The measurements had to change.
How quaint of us, flops.
So some of these news stories are recent, and some of them are just ones we haven't even addressed. We haven't really gotten to.
Yeah.
Let's start with this AWS. They've detailed Project Rainier AI compute cluster with hundreds of thousands of chips.
Yeah.
This is like the AI of the AI. This is AI on steroids. Normally, you what? Train AI in a single compute center.
A single data center. Yeah.
A single data center.
Yeah.
And this is not the case here.
No, this is really interesting to me. So AWS, they've been working on AI clusters for several years now. This is not new to them.
This is Amazon. This is Amazon's.
Amazon with Anthropic.
Yeah.
AWS is one of the larger shareholders in Anthropic. They've got a pretty large, still think, minority stake. Anthropic is the private
public benefit corporation
Yep.
that is working on this AI.
I have my own private benefit corporations. That's different.
Yeah.
I think all corporations are private benefit corporations.
They kind of are.
At least
yeah.
I hope they try to be. The good ones try to be. So what is interesting to me about this is that, as Jeff was alluding to, most AI companies have taking the approach of single data centers for their training models because there's low latency, right? You've got all the machines next to each other, and that's important for compute.
All the machines have to talk to each other very, very quickly. So you can't jump out of the data center and go to another data center.
Yeah.
Theoretically, until now.
It's really hard. Well, yeah, it's slow, so it slows down all of your compute.
Yeah.
And AWS is, I think, really interestingly positioned for this because they have so much knowledge and experience around infrastructure and specifically large systems with all the AWS data centers they've built.
And multi-location systems.
At many locations, yeah. So what they've done with this, I mean, not only have they designed their own chips, so I think now they're one of TSMC's biggest customers, which is fascinating to me.
Gone from what? Non-existent? I mean, they made some chips for
they sold
nothing
books.
until
they
now.
fucking sold books. What do you mean?
No, I mean, I don't mean 20 years ago, but I mean, you know.
Could you imagine the guy?
They weren't making chips weeks ago.
The guy taking the input order from the web form at TSMC was like, it's like, what kind of business do you operate? Like, well, we're an online bookseller. And he's like, really? You want to make, sorry, I think you've got the wrong address. This is not a Wendy's.
Right.
No. So here's what's really fascinating to me is I kind of feel like AWS could be one of the ones to really give NVIDIA and the others a run for their money because NVIDIA is mainly making chips with obviously interconnect, but they don't have the expertise beyond sort of their massively powerful and expensive GPUs. AWS does, and specifically for interconnect. So they've dubbed this thing Elastic Fabric Adapter. They described it as a super high-speed data transfer method between data centers.
Yeah.
And my hunch is what they've done is eliminated a bunch of the switching, which is where pretty much all your latency comes from.
Sure.
And you may have I'm being a little...
direct fiber connect between...
Almost like a direct fiber connect between data centers, right? You're still going to have some switching. It's not going to be light in, light out. But I do suspect you're going to have a very low amount of latency for a very wide amount of bandwidth, right? With probably some pretty fascinating prioritization over everything else.
Yeah.
What's important about this is the limiting factor for AI data centers, especially when you're doing training, is power. We're in a world where you can put more chips into a physical location than you can have power service.
Sure.
And that's fascinating, right? Because you can scale up, make those chips faster all you want, and they'll get slightly more efficient, but you have a rate limiting step that is power, the amount of power you can put into a physical location.
Which is amazing. That's the limiting factor.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And now if they can spread that, I mean, the other limiting factor is money, but we've solved that problem with several companies.
Amazon doesn't really have that problem.
No, and that's what's even more bananas is they said that they'd spend, in 2024, $75 billion on just capital expenditures, right? Just CapEx is $75 billion. You got
Who else can do that?
Nobody.
I mean, there's such a small number of companies who could do that.
If they could get their shit together, the U.S. could, but that's about it. Like, there's not a lot of others. Like, you're in a world
we don't throw down like that.
Like, you roll through the G8 and you're just like, yeah, we're spending more than all you guys combined on AI, right? Like, that's kind of bananas. I'm fascinated by this. And they're calling this Trainium, by the way. This is the Trainium 2 chip, which is the best name ever.
Trainium is an amazing name for an AI chip.
I absolutely love that. So the AWS has this other project that they're still moving forward with, which is this project Siebia, which is all NVIDIA chips. So they're doing this in parallel, which again, who else can do this but Amazon? It's really fascinating to me.
It's a smart way of going about this.
Yeah.
Let's come at this in every single way possible. By the way, we say this all the time about AI. I feel like we say this and we say this and we say this. This is such a game changer. The fact that you can now use multiple data centers for your AI.
For training, specifically for training it too.
But it changes everything.
I mean, this is pretty fascinating. We've seen all this build up in the past couple of years, which is pretty amazing. So this is Anthropic. Anthropic are the guys that have brought us Claude, which is one of the AI models that I know the least about. And they have doubled down on this. Now, I'd be curious to see. Rainier's not going to be completed until next year, 2025. That is going to come fast and furious. The desire, or at least I believe the intent, is to drive the cost for training down, which should allow more early stage companies that don't have $10 billion to build their own data centers get access into sort of the AI arms race.
Cruise's robotaxi service will likely shut down as GM pulls funding. GM's autonomous and assisted driving strategy will focus on Super Cruise and personal vehicles, not robotaxis.
So this is interesting to me too, because they say in this announcement that, it's not their core business. Robotaxis is not their core business.
Yeah.
They want to focus on their core business. That all makes sense to me. But I do wonder, once you have sort of autonomous self-driving, which I appreciate that they don't have yet, but once you have that as part of Super Cruise, right?
Cruise is a lot closer than most companies.
Oh, yeah.
It's not as close as Waymo, but it's pretty good.
Of course. No, it's great. I'm very impressed, right? I mean, GM, I think, smartly bought this company early on for, I think, like 1.7 or just under $2 billion, something like that. It was a smart acquisition, and I believe that this will ultimately bear fruit. However, I don't know the incremental cost for the robotaxi service. They said, look, it's very expensive.
Sure.
I would think once you get self-driving, to make a car that's self-driving you can buy from a GM dealership into a robotaxi robotaxi is incremental at best.
It collects fares, it pulls over for people to get in and out, locks its doors. Yeah, who cares?
And like also like do it after. Don't do it now. I don't think they're going to they don't have the hype. GM has no polish relative to a Tesla to get the bump of excitement for robotaxis. So that doesn't make any sense to me. I do wonder if this is more like, let's just take what limited resources we have, focus them on the thing we want to get done first.
Yeah, maybe.
And once that's sorted, then go do robotaxis, right? Then go, because
I don't think that's it at all. When they say that it's become too expensive for GM to justify the huge amounts of what they mean is robotaxis are going to put us out of business. It's going to kill the business of you need to own a car.
Sure.
When there's enough robotaxis on the road, we're all just going to share a much smaller number of vehicles because it works.
I mean, they said in this announcement that their robotaxi subsidiary lost like $3.5 billion last year, which just breaks my brain.
Waymo in San Francisco is profitable.
Yeah, but I do wonder are they loading self-driving development costs into that they're going to pull out? I just don't know what do you spend that building? Was it all just like trying to find a fucking logo? Spent $3.5 billion trying to find a logo that wasn't yellow because we didn't want to be confused with yellow taxis. Like,
it's going to be nice, yeah.
Where did
it be a nice logo?
It's going to be nice. We had to put a third color in. That was another $1 billion right there. You're like, huh. Settle down.
No, this is as are all autonomous vehicle systems. It's a lot of specific individual aberrations.
Yeah.
Special cases.
Yeah.
That's a fortune.
Yeah, of course.
In the case of GM, I never really understood why they wanted to go into the robotaxi business because it will ultimately bury your car business. It's going to eliminate all those individual cars that you need to sell.
But it's the Kodak story. You either eat your lunch or someone else eats your lunch for you.
Did you think GM was that smart?
They bought Cruise. They bought Cruise at a time when people said this is dumb, and I think they were really looking down the tracks, and I think that was smart. So normally I wouldn't say GM, I wouldn't think of them as a very cutting edge business, but I think in this case they were, because they bought Cruise very early. I actually talked to a guy who is an investor in Cruise at the time of the exits, at the time that GM bought them.
Yeah.
And I said, how do you value this, right? Like, because that GM deal, Cruise had no revenue. Like, how do you value that deal? I actually asked him that question pointed. And he said, well, look, you got to think of it this way. From GM's perspective, what percentage of their market cap are they willing to give up to stay relevant?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, fuck, you put it that way. His point was, if you don't have some sort of technology stack, autonomous driving, we weren't even talking about robotaxis, just talking about sort of autonomous driving.
Yeah.
He's like, if you don't have that, in some number of years, whatever, 10, 20 years.
Sure.
You're no longer a car maker. You're a parts maker.
Yeah, sure.
Right. And I was like, oh yeah, that's the difference, right? Like, you might still exist in some shell of yourself because you've got manufacturing capabilities, but in reality, you're not doing what you were doing before. And I really do think GM figured that out then.
And then that makes sense to own a company that makes self-driving capabilities, cruise control, advanced cruise control type abilities for your cars.
But here's my thing. The way the robotaxis win, assuming you don't sort of privatize it like an Uber, which has always been Musk's pitch. Musk's pitch has been, while you're sitting having coffee, your Tesla's out driving around, picking people up, making you money, right? That was always like, when Uber first started, you couldn't take an Uber everywhere. It took Uber a while, right? It took some number of years to get there. Yeah. But now it's kind of shocking to go somewhere that doesn't have Uber. So my point is, it's going to take some time to get there. I don't think it's going to be measured in decades. I think it's going to be measured in like 5 or 10 years. But
less.
Zooming back, my point is, you've got the sort of privatized approach to robotaxis, which I can see a path on for some number of years. But then ultimately, when you think about like a robotaxi fleet, to me, the person with the most capital wins, because you've got to put out a shit ton of capex to put all these these things out, and that ain't fucking GM.
It's Amazon's fleet.
Exactly. It's Amazon or it's Google or it's something like that that's doing some.
And Amazon is like flying under the radar. People don't even know Amazon has a fleet of these things that are out being tested all over the country. They're like 4 cities now where they're being tested. Actually, they're being used in 2.
Yeah.
And in 2 other places they're being tested. You got to keep your eye on Amazon.
Uber's backed into this by saying we're going to start by moving people, and then they've worked into food delivery and they've worked into package delivery as well, right? Which is really neat.
That's great. And
I kind of see Amazon almost doing the opposite. Like, you can start with some mechanism of package delivery or item delivery, and then go, oh, we'll take people too.
Yeah.
And this could absolutely be a thing. And I'm somewhat fascinated by how that's going to come together in the next like single digit years. Yeah. Who has the most capital? It's not going to be fucking GM. And even if GM, you go, well, they can make the car so they can take the margin out. There's no fucking margin.
There's no margin in cars. There hasn't been margin.
You don't have a competitive advantage in that.
By the way, there is margin in most electric cars, and that's going to come out too.
Not those Baidu ones. There's no margin in those.
Right, because you're selling a car for $12,000. You've taken the margin out, and that's why they're not allowed, I'm sure in the U.S., because we think, wow, we've got to keep, what margin we can for our local manufacturers.
I'm not for the PRC having control over a bunch of vehicles running around our country.
But watch what happens. Even Toyota's selling one in China that's now like sub $25,000, and it's a really nice electric car.
Is that the one where you can you can simulate the classic Toyota experience and you press the button and the accelerator pegs to the floor and it just drives you full speed? Too soon?
Everybody's had those issues. I mean, Tesla had those issues. Do you remember that when the accelerator would get stuck and the Cybertruck crashed into the Beverly Hills Hotel?
Yeah, but that was like a broken mount or something. I think in the Toyota's case, it was
No, it was worse than that. It was like it got stuck in the carpet, in the mat.
Yeah, well, that's what happened. No, that's what happened with the Toyota one, right? Is the mat bunched up and
yeah.
But for a moment there, they're like, Toyotas aren't safe to drive, and it's like,
no, dude, it's your mat.
That's the case. People, it's
and you know how they fixed it?
They put in like clips in the floor, right?
There's a little clip in the floor for your mat now, so it doesn't scooch up.
Occam's razor, man, the simplest solution. What always is nuts to me about these situations, and I see this often when people get into a situation that they are not accustomed and they're not used to. The vast majority of people just absolutely panic.
Sure,
and you just watch them panic. And if you don't have a good control when you panic, I get it. It can be absolutely petrifying.
Sure. Amazon's online car dealership with Hyundai is now live. People in 48 U.S. cities can browse, order, finance, and pick up Hyundai vehicles on Amazon's new car shopping site.
So first of all, I think this is really cool.
Yeah.
I like the idea of direct access for cars. I think the fact that you have something like 48 states that mandate a dealer be in the middle is ridiculous and just goes to the lobbying power of the car dealership network.
Of course. And by the way, car dealerships are what was paying for most broadcast television. Your local broadcast
your local
television
broadcast
station was paid for by your local car dealerships. So they had a lot to say.
I'm glad to see that this is eroding a little bit. Now, the way Amazon is doing this, they're not selling the cars directly. They're selling the cars through dealers on Amazon's site, which hopefully is a toehold. I would like to see this changed. I went and looked at the product. It's kind of cool. I mean, it's very Amazon-esque in that it's no bullshit. You see everything, the price, the specs of the car. It's all right in front of you, where it is.
Sure.
I was like, okay, that's pretty cool.
Fake reviews. It's got some fake reviews. That's nice.
Fake reviews. You're like, this is the best potato masher I've ever used. I'm like, it's a fucking Hyundai Ioniq. I don't understand. What do you mean potato masher? The part, though, if you read the fine print, the part that's the most concerning to me about this is if you buy one of these cars off Amazon, when you go get it, you only have like 1 day to deliver all the packages that are in the trunk.
That's your job?
Yeah, that's part of the deal is you're doing this last mile package delivery.
I had no idea.
And they don't tell you that up front.
They're going to add more types of cars eventually to this.
Sure, bigger ones with more packages.
I don't mean to step on our vintage ad thing. Doesn't Amazon sell books?
So as it turns out, all these cars are shaped like books.
Okay.
Doesn't Amazon sell books?
Okay. Wow, this thing has expanded. We're selling cars now.
My favorite game to play is what things aren't sold on Amazon. And that list just gets smaller and smaller
all the
by
time.
the day.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like, what can you really, you're like, uranium. You're like, yep, on Amazon. You want 2 day or 1 day? Pay the extra $4.
And how long until Amazon is in the business of manufacturing cars? Because they get all this data, like sweatshirts, something stupid and benign
Amazon
like
Basic.
They get all this data and they create their own. Is there going to be an Amazon Basic car?
I mean, probably.
By the way, have you ever bought an Amazon Basic sweatshirt or t-shirt?
Yes. My kids have their jackets, the Amazon Basic jackets, because they grow out of them so fast. I got sick of buying them nice jackets.
And they're super, super cheap.
They're really nice. They're not shit.
This is what I'm going to tell you. They're really great.
Yeah.
I don't need all the products manufactured by one company, so I kind of feel like I need to spread my money around a little bit.
Sure.
But man, the Amazon Basic stuff is not awful.
No, it's great.
And if I don't like my Hyundai, can I drive it to my local Whole Foods and turn it back in and have them ship it back to Amazon? Does that work?
And you get $10 off a $40 order when you do it. Oh, that'd be great. My God. I just want to go rent a Hyundai and show up down and I'm like, I'm returning this thing. It's fucking terrible. I don't want this anymore.
I have the original packaging if you want
I have the box it came in. Do you want that?
The soft-sided envelope
you just
that
put
it
one of
came
those little
in.
stickers on the side and it's like, it's your problem now. I don't care. You deal with it. What comes next?
USDA mandates federal bird flu testing in milk. The U.S. Department of Agriculture on Friday announced a federal order that the country's milk supply be tested for bird flu.
Oh, it's another example of the deep state trying to push big milk out of business.
Sure.
Here we go.
The sluggish response to the H5N1 bird flu outbreak has alarmed researchers, especially with new findings. The virus is one mutation away from being able to more efficiently affect humans and latch onto human cells.
Okay, so that was, by the way, Real Science, published by an academic journal. That wasn't like some Facebook bullshit. But I do like to think of the virus as basically just like playing a little tiny microscopic game of press your luck. And the whole time it's just like, come on, big money, no whammies. Like they're just, fuck, we got possums again. We're trying to get humans. And they just keep going through this cycle over and over again.
That seems to be how it works.
Of what we know of science and existing science, pasteurization is going to kill whatever is in the milk that is not good. Any pathogens, right? Any
sort of virus. Yeah.
Viral
sure.
pathogens, bacterial pathogens.
Yeah.
That process, I don't know the specifics of it. I'm not a dairy farmer, not yet. You just heat the milk up super hot for like a short period of time, right? Like 160 degrees Fahrenheit for like 15 seconds, something like that. And it kills everything that's in the milk, right? Flash pasteurization and you've killed it all.
Sure.
The problem has been the raw milk. There's these providers of raw milk that say, oh, it's not pasteurized, you have all these benefits. And that's where we've seen it at the consumer level. That's where we've seen the H5N1 bird flu in the milk. But you also have an upstream problem. And why I think the FDA is mandating testing in all milk right now is there's a period of time between when the milk comes out of the cow and when it gets pasteurized.
There are workers who are handling that milk.
And it's being transported and also it can reinfect animals, like animals that are in those facilities, whether it's other cows or rats or whatever, and then sort of keeps that moving around.
Backtrack just a second here. We're talking about the people who like raw milk. Now it's because they're afraid the enzymes or something are being killed in the milk.
Fuck if I know.
Tell me what the attraction is to raw milk. Why do people like that?
I don't know. Because it's nature. It's the way nature intended it for us all.
There's nothing about any of this that is nature intended. You are drinking another...
Us drinking milk?
Mammals' milk. This sounds like a horrible idea.
Yeah. Okay. How dare you bring logic into the conversation? I watched 12 Instagram videos that told me raw milk and raw honey was going to cure me of all of my diseases.
Sure.
And that's all I need to know. Science be damned.
But even pasteurized milk. Who still drinks milk in 2024? Yeah, okay, ice cream, cheese. But wow, it's just such a weird thing that we do.
To drink milk?
Does any other creature
I don't think so.
take the milk of another creature?
Well, no. What do you think there's like a farm of kangaroos? Like milk?
I know.
How would that even work?
I have no idea. It just seems like a strange thing that we humans have decided, hey, you know what's great?
No, it's one of the strangest things we do. We do a lot of strange things, and that is very high on the list.
Somebody said at some point, Carl, go get that cow's udder.
First of all, it wasn't Carl. Here's the thing. This is actually really fascinating. There's lactose, right? There's lactose that's in the milk.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, every other species other than humans has evolved such that after infancy, they no longer can process
it kills you.
The lactose, right?
Yes.
So lactose goes through you and usually comes out as gas. Now, we as humans have evolved, I think really only a couple thousand years ago, to be able to continue to process the lactose. I think it's through, what is it, lactate or lactase?
Okay.
Is what you have in you, allows you to break down the lactose. And the folks that could process lactose have been the successive lines that have continued to evolve. So now most people can process lactose. And my presumption was first, well, okay, that was a cheap source of protein.
Sure.
As you got to domesticate cows and you could get this sort of cheap source of protein, those people survived and their genes survived. So you ended up with
and the other people starved and died,
lactose.
the people who couldn't process
That's
it. Yeah,
exactly.
of course.
That's how I assumed it evolved. But then if you think about it, if you can't process lactose, you end up just being very gaseous. And my hunch is nobody's breeding with those people. Like my hunch is
They didn't want you around.
They're just like, hey, farty guy, I'm not breeding with you. That's not interesting. But either way, you end up with a bunch of folks that like lactose. Now, I do think a lot about Carl and how that went down the first time, where they were like, hey, put your head under there. Yeah, go on, see what happens.
And what other animals did Carl and his friends try before they got to the cow?
All of them. He wrote a great autobiographical series. It was like the Nathan Myvold series. There's several books.
Sure.
It was called, I believe, Can I Milk This?
Sure.
I think that's what it was called.
Can I drink this?
Does it milk? I think it was called Does It Milk? And he just tried everything. And you can still, in certain corners of the internet, hypothetically, you can still buy cat milk. It's just very expensive.
Oh my gosh, how gross. Can you drink horse's milk?
Why would you?
Are they just gross? Goat milk. People obviously have goat milk. That's a thing, right? I didn't make that up.
Yeah, I think. I'm not a milkologist. I don't know how you build this show to your friends.
Deer milk? Is there moose milk? Is there deer milk?
I think it's a function of like how big and how quickly the animal gets to size. Cows get very big very fast. Therefore, the mothers produce a lot of milk.
600 pounds or something they gain in 6 months.
Okay, listen.
None of this milk that should go in your mouth.
I'm working on it, okay?
Yeah.
It was lasagna and some beef ribs. 600 pounds in 6 months. You know what I call that? Life goal. Hashtag life goal. 600 pounds in 6 months.
It was the son of one one of Baskin or Robbins, one of the ice cream guys.
Oh, yeah, Robin.
Who actually came out and said,
I have the book, Diet for New America.
This milk thing is absolutely crazy. If you want to be a creature who gains 600 pounds in 6 months, milk is the drink for you.
He was like one of the fathers of the vegan movement in the 80s.
Is that right?
He wrote a book called Diet for New America. Yeah, I've got it sitting here on the shelf. I read it. Yeah, he was like heir to the Baskin-Robbins fortune, but instead was like, no, I'm going to pontificate this vegan movement, and was considered one of the sort of like fathers of the modern vegan movement.
The first round of testing is scheduled to begin the week of December 16th in 6 states: California, Colorado, Michigan, Mississippi, Pennsylvania, and Oregon.
Get your tickets now.
All right, this story is going to be a hard right turn.
Okay, from raw milk? Oh boy, I hope it's a hard right turn.
But I think it's such a fascinating story.
Go ahead.
Teaching rats to drive a tiny car around a laboratory had some far-reaching effects.
Jesus Christ, is this Musk's new approach to fucking autonomous cars? We're teaching rats?
Maybe.
Is that what he's doing? You're like, no, it's not autonomous, it's a rat.
He was hiring people to drive them remotely. Teaching the rats to drive these tiny cars has taught scientists a lot about the benefits of anticipating the joy brought about by the things we love. It may help us lead happier lives. This experiment in having rats drive.
Yeah.
The rats that got instant gratification were much more pessimistic, less happy. And the rats that had anticipation, they had to drive the car to get the pellet. They were much happier.
Wait, so are you implying that the 405 makes me a happier person because there's traffic on it? Because I
think there's diminishing returns if your drive takes too long.
There's a lot of anticipation happening there. There's also a lot of yelling at the asshole in front of me.
They crafted a car out of a plastic cereal container, and then a little trial and error, and they eventually figured out that the rat could grasp a small wire that acted like a gas pedal. And pretty soon, before long, they were steering with precision to reach a Fruit Loop treat.
So first of all, the rats are hot wiring the car. Is that what I just heard? They're grasping small wires and then touching them together?
The wire is the accelerator.
Okay. Oh, I see. And then they're basically doing this for Fruit Loops.
Yeah.
I mean, we should just tell the rats about Amazon Fresh. I feel like that would break their brains.
Well, that's what they're saying is they had other rats that they just gave Fruit Loops treat to, and they were much more pessimistic.
They just sat on their couch and watched football. That's all they did. And they were just fucking cowboys are terrible.
So then robotics professor John McManus and his students created an actual electric ROV for the rats, a little car for the rats that actually has really cool tires.
I'll take the bait. A rat operational vehicle?
Rat operated vehicle is what they say.
You said they use like a plastic cereal container. Do these guys not have any funding? I don't understand. Can we just get you like a box?
That was their original car. And then eventually they made the car out of all these, rat-proof wiring, indestructible tires, ergonomic driving levers. Rats typically prefer dirt, sticks, and rocks over plastic objects, and now they're driving cars.
Yeah. The AI and the robots and all that shit. Yeah, that's bad. That's probably going to kill us. But the rats driving cars, they went from sticks and leaves to like, I got a Prius.
Sure.
Like, that sounds like a big jump.
The surprising thing about the experiment, what the experiment shows is that if you have the rats perform a task to get their treat, they are happier than if they don't perform the task and just get the treat.
Well, it demonstrated that and the fact that they'll give a subprime car loan to anybody. How many years experience do you have as a lab rat? Like, it's not a very long job. It usually ends in death.
Yeah, it's only a 3-year lifespan. Can't be too long.
We're going to give you this 10-year lease on this vehicle. You'll be fine. In this same research, they said in more support of how anticipation can reinforce behavior, they had cited some previous work with lab rats that showed that rats that would press a bar for cocaine would experience a surge of dopamine as they anticipated a dose of cocaine.
Oh my word.
Right, which also stimulates dopamine activation.
Sure.
You just have a bunch of lab rats hammering on this bar trying to get more cocaine so they can go back out at night and just party a little harder. And but I love that they're like, that you would get this like stimulation of dopamine before you get the cocaine when you press the bar. And
or
I'm
you get this massive stimulation of dopamine.
You could have just called me and asked. Of course, everyone gets. No one's like, oh, my cocaine's here. I'm not excited. Like everyone is excited when their cocaine gets there.
Why did they think, let's try cocaine in the experiment? Was there actually somebody had some cocaine and they went, quick, act like it's part of the experiment?
No, that's opposite. Somebody needed some fucking cocaine and they were like, let's do an experiment. Let's we'll get the rats to push the little button.
We can requisition it with the money.
Totally. It's a whole room of rats that have terrible teeth. That's the meth button that they press.
I was going to say, well, let's see what happens with the rats when they hit the lever and they get heroin.
Totally. I would love to pitch that for like an NIH grant.
I mean, it's just all these different, what happens if we give them a little THC?
Sure.
What do the rats do now?
I'll just sit around just bitching about the fact that they can't get their raw milk. They've done this a couple times. I think the ones where they get the THC, the rats just immediately go over and put on Dark Side of the Moon and just chill. They just sit back and listen to all of Dark. I mean, it makes the lab nice because you hear a lot of Dark Side of the Moon. But.
All right, we have to get out of here, but quickly before we do, have you seen or read anything good this last week?
Good to me. I don't know if it's going to be good to anybody else.
Okay.
But I think at least one listener of this show will enjoy this.
Talk about narrow casting.
It's very narrow. It's just for that one. I think I know who it is, but I'm waiting to see if they text me after I say this.
Wow.
So I'm a big fan of Yann LeCun. Do you know who Yann is?
Chief AI scientist at Meta.
At Meta, yeah. So he's awesome. He takes a pretty big social social media presence, and he's considered one of the fathers of modern AI. He posted a video last week from 1989 of him, a younger version of him, demonstrating the quote LeNet 1, which was the first convolutional network that could recognize handwritten digits with good speed and accuracy.
Wow.
Now, LeNet 1 was developed in early 1989 in the Adaptive System Research Department at Bell Labs in New Jersey. This quote real-time demo ran on a DSP card that was installed in a 486 PC, similar to the one that we recommended earlier this episode, with a video camera and a frame grabber card. The DSP had an AT&T DSP32C chip, which is important because it was the first 32-bit floating point DSP that could do an amazing 12.5 million accumulate operations per second.
Okay.
Right?
Sure.
So 12 million operations per second. That was cutting edge in 1989.
So you're doing AI on a machine that you basically crank.
By today's standards, yes, but then that was incredible. And the video is him showing via a camera, putting up handwritten digits, and it's figuring them out.
Yeah.
The way he said he did this was they trained using this SN environment, which is like a Lisp-based neural net simulator, which is kind of like an ancestor to Torch 7, which itself is an ancestor of PyTorch. And anyone that's played around with AI in the past couple of years, it's been around PyTorch. So this is like literally the ascendant of modern machine learning and convolutional networks. He said they wrote a kind of quote compiler in SN that could produce self-contained pieces of C code that could run the network. So the network weights were array literals inside the C source code.
Okay.
That is pretty cool to me. Like they basically just jammed an array full of a bunch of values from its training.
Sure.
Nothing like what we have now.
There's a Steve Martin joke and the punchline goes, it says sprocket, not socket. Do you remember that joke?
Are we doing that now? Is that what I'm doing?
I think you've basically just done that.
Okay, well, listen, I'll stop with the nerdness. But here's why I'm highlighting this today. So it's only a minute-long video. Go watch it. It's really cute. So this whole thing was super interesting to me, right? I'm a nerd. I love shit like this. Sure. But the part that just made me smile the most was that in Yann's post on YouTube, he mentioned that the video itself had been restored using a modern ConvNet-based video enhancement tool, which he said is, quote, a self-referential and interesting way. Now, what's fascinating about this is his
early AI imaging system. The video of that has been enhanced by a modern day video AI enhancing system.
That's cool. Doing, billions of operations per second. To enable this, if not more, probably actually trillions of operations per second. Is what they executed on. And I just looked at that and I was like, man, this is just awesome technology. Like he had this, what I presume was a crappy VHS video from the late 80s of him doing this like in the lab research project, which when I came across AI in the late 90s in school, it was still very much this is in the lab, this is never getting out, this is going to be in here forever. And then now to have like pull something down from Hugging Face, run it on this VHS video, like it was more work to digitize the VHS video than it was to enhance it. And that is mind-boggling to me. So it was really fun. And that was why I'm highlighting it. Now I know you're going to tell me you watched something much cooler and much better that people will actually care about, but that was mine.
Mine is maybe possibly a little more technological than yours. Are you ready for this?
I don't believe it.
Conclave, a movie about a cardinal tasked with leading one of the world's most secretive and ancient events, selecting a new pope.
Oh, wow.
In the process of presiding over a series of ballots,
that's cool.
He finds himself investigating secrets and scandals about each candidate.
But they just had like a holy category cube that had a bunch of names on it, and they just rolled it.
I think you'd get a very similar result.
And they're like, oh, fuck, we got Carl again.
Starring Ray Fiennes, Stanley Tucci, and John Lithgow.
Oh, it's got Lithgow in it? Oh, I love Lithgow. No, you roll it, and it comes up with Carl, and you're like, well, fuck, it can't be Carl. Roll it again. Like, oh, we got John the Third. Okay, John's good.
Pope Stevie. Pope. I always try to think of what's a Pope name you've never heard. Pope Bob. We need a Pope Bob.
Pope Bob would be great.
Pope Kevin. Let's get Pope Kevin in here. Full of twists and turns, incredible acting, a ridiculously amazing score, and beautifully shot. Looks to me like on a Red 5 Raptor 8K, but I have no actual inside information. So just a hint if you're wondering what to get me for Christmas. It was named one of the top 10 films in 2024 by the National Board of Review and the American Film Institute.
Two things. One, I'm waiting for the sequel, which will be called Convex. Two, you can't own a Red V Raptor 8K. That's a Nikon product now. They're owned by Nikon.
Yeah, it's true.
You can't go to the dark side.
Have you played on any of these cameras? No. The Arri Alexa LF Mini is the coolest camera I've ever.
That's supposed to be amazing.
Now, I don't want a camera that really.
Yeah, you do.
I do. So much I do.
Don't lie to me.
I can't tell you how much I
can
do.
Tell. Sitting right across from you.
To properly utilize this thing, you really need two people.
Yeah.
It's not really a one-person camera.
Look, between me, you, and the donuts here at the table, we can do this. I'll pull focus for you.
It is. Thank you. It is such an amazing piece of equipment. I am such a sucker for these things.
The C80 is what? Is 6K
The Canon
frame.
stuff is great, and the amateur stuff is great, but the dynamic range of what is happening now with the Reds and what is happening with the
It's got to be
absolutely absolutely mind-blowing. It's
We lost
really
everybody. Like, and another thing about the AI and Elon was fucking shut up.
Conclave in theaters now.
Turn it on Pivot. Enough. I'll check that out.
That is the episode.
Thank you for joining us for all this nonsense. Truly terrible podcast about useless information from the Awful Company. Visit us on the web at nonsense.productions. I'm Steve.
I'm Jeff Parker.
If you like this program, please follow, download, subscribe, and like it. Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, AntennaPod, iHeartRadio, Spotify, my favorite Overcast, or wherever you may get your podcasts from.
Nonsense uses the Arch Linux operating system with the KDE desktop for its editing systems. Infinite customization for maximum productivity with no ads and no bloatware. As always, open source and free. Special thanks to our floor director, Scott Little.
Thanks, Skippy. We'll be here every Thursday morning for more nonsense. Please join us.
It is true when you drive through West Hollywood, which has a high percentage of gay residents. It's beautiful.
Yeah, of course.
The neighborhoods are gorgeous.
Everybody's just fucking working out. Everybody's ripped. Like, there's no fat people. You know how, like, when this doesn't have much in California, 'cause it's a big state, but like sometimes especially in your back east, you'll see a car with out-of-state plates. You're like, oh, that person's visiting. They're not from here.
Yeah.
That's what happens when I drive through West Hollywood. They're like, look at that fat guy. Oh, he's visiting. He's not from here.
He doesn't belong here.
No, he's from the valley. And I'm like, yep, yeah, you're right. I'm from the valley. You know, I got like an In-N-Out burger in one hand, a double. In the other hand, I've got like a shake. Yeah, they know. Trust me, they know.